Everything is just fine and dandy. But it starts getting late at night, and I fired up some of that Northern California good stuff, and the next thing I know, I had a little munchies going in. So I got my ice cream maker out, and I'm making fresh, homemade strawberry ice cream. And the maker makes a noise, but I wasn't thinking anything about it when I heard boom, on my front door.
I opened the door and my heart flew to my throat. I had 5 officers staring me in the face. I said, golly, guys, I said, I guess my ice cream maker was making a little too much noise. And they just barged right in. Well, that was not a good thing for me. I had cocaine stashed in all of the cupboards in the kitchen. I had stuff in the suitcases with the lids open. I've got my career going now. Everything is going great. And now I'm going to blow it all.
The police scouring AJ's apartment, and they are opening up cupboards. They're filled with bricks of cocaine, drugs all over the place.
You must have been pretty scared at that point.
I was scared because I figured, oh, here I go with one with good behavior, because I had so much there.
I figured, well, where's the seed of greater advantage going to be in this adversity? One guy captured my attention.
Joe Perez, he was the lead investigator.
Joe Perez was a detective, presumably a very good one, and one of his nicknames was Thumper. He got the name Thumper not from Disney. He got the name Thumper because he would thump people.
And then they introduced themselves as the Organized Crime Unit of Las Vegas, Nevada. I said, well, if you're the Organized Crime Unit, what do you want with me? And Detective Perez informed me that I've been on the radar for quite some time because there had been a tremendous amount of activity in and out of my apartment. The people coming and going were members of organized crime. So Detective Perez starts to interrogate me pretty thoroughly.
And he says, you've got a lot of stuff in here. I said, yes. I was scared to death. And he says, what's this about? I said, well, what's what about? He said, all this stuff hanging here. And I said, oh, you mean the clothing? He says, yeah.
Joe Perez doesn't ask one question about the drugs. Joe Perez sees the clothes.
I had at that time a lot of beautiful things I just finished making, just literally hanging from the walls or any place I could hang it.
KJ had a lot of his costumes that he had made for Tom Jones, Wayne Newton, Elvis Presley. Joe Perez saw these and he started questioning AJ about what he did.
He asked me, he says, what do you do? I said, I'm a costume and a fashion designer.
If Joel Perez is interested in the connections with the mob and entertainment and a tailor and the clothing, then the cocaine is not his issue. They have bigger fish in mind. At the very moment, Las Vegas and the federal government are trying to get the mob out of the casino business. So if AJ can get the organized crime unit to the people they really want to get, that's fine.
Basically, that's it. He doesn't arrest him for any of the drugs, just kind of as if that didn't happen. And him and the other detectives walk out.
So the next morning, I immediately went to work cleaning everything I had out of my house.
Things are getting very complicated for AJ now, because now if they found him with drugs, they could use that as leverage for telling them information about the mob. They're going to want something at some point.
That was the first direct reference in my life that I had ever talked to anybody about organized crime. To me, their clientele, I'm there to design and make clothing. And the Las Vegas operation was booming.
Working for the mob, as AJ was in the 1970s, opened a lot of doors for him. They introduced him to a lot of celebrities who were there at the time. There was Tom Jones, there was Wayne Newton, Elvis, and they even gave him money to open shops all over the country, including the 10,000 square foot space in Arizona.
AJ thought at one point that Phoenix would be a great center of fashion. Clearly, that was a erroneous judgment from the start. No offense, Phoenix. But the mob had arranged for him to lease a huge building.
It was a spectacular studio in the beautiful Paul Johnson building, which was called AJ's Storybook of Fashion.
It was like an AJ fantasy world.
Inside this retail space, there would be areas, almost like a Disneyland. One area would be a golf course. Another area would be like a tiki bar.
A disco ball and dance room, fake ski slopes with skiers and AJ's fashions.
Had mannequins all over the place. They all looked just like AJ, all dressed, looked great. I mean, it was really beautiful.
I didn't know what to expect from it. It was very, very active.
It was very successful.
This is big time for AJ. He's got all these stores opening all over the place, and he's trying to balance the cocaine business as well.
I noticed when AJ had come to town, he had a lot of money. I mean, I knew his business was doing very well and everything, but he had a lot of money, and he also had a lot of drugs.
Here I am opening these studios, and all of a sudden, at the same time, the drug part had exploded.
He'd always stay with me. We'd start drinking or partying, having a good time, and then he'd pull out a little Coke.
I had unlimited supply of cocaine and some of the highest quality that had ever been seen. And the connections that I had in Las Vegas were all over me.
Here the mob is financing his clothing business, yet he's doing all this cocaine business with the Colombians.
I had to keep the secret, and I was all over Las Vegas. I was the biggest drug distributor in the state of Nevada and probably in several other states.
Barry Seal and AJ, and they were flying a lot of cocaine in and out of Colombia. And when AJ used to take off on these trips, and he'd be gone maybe 3-4 weeks, and I always worried about him. I knew what kind of business he was in at the time, and I didn't know whether, to be honest with you, I didn't even know I'd just see him again, because the business he's in is a real dangerous type business. As a younger brother, he protected me pretty much from the drug business, but I knew something was going on. I know my mother worried herself sick. She didn't know he was in the cocaine business at the time, though. She only knew he was doing some drugs, I think.
As things progressed, more and more was coming in. It was tons. I mean, he had a plane. He could fill up the plane with quite a lot. That causes a problem in terms of quantity.
It was really exploding to the point to where it was too much. Barry starts to explain to me that we need a good place to be able to store some quantity without raising an eyebrow.
And so he got another house in Venice, California.
I had the property there in Venice, which was just absolutely ideal and perfect. It's a very quiet neighborhood, right close there at the beach. It has private access into the alley that I keep a lot of my vehicles.
In the 70s, I went to visit AJ there in California. He flew me out to spend a few days with him, and he had me stay out in his guest house. 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm waking up, I'm hearing things moving in and out. I told AJ, I said, there's all kinds of stuff going on out back. He just said, oh, don't pay any attention to it. It wasn't nothing. Little did I know that he was moving a lot of cocaine at that time, and they were actually bringing it in, and they were putting it up in his ceiling in the main house.
We would store a lot of it secretly in the rafters of the main house.
How did that happen?
I get a little code call from Barry, and it meant that I should step out back, and then there would be a van there, and I would unlock the padlock on the gate.
He hid cocaine in the attic, in the walls.
Got to the point to where there was more cocaine than I've ever laid my eyes on in my own possession.
That became rather exciting.
Now, in AJ's case, he's moving cocaine around, but he's also on cocaine. And drugs do things to people. You begin to think that if things are going well for you, you're invincible.
A few weeks after his first visit, Detective Joel Perez knocks on the door again.
Joel Perez was standing there. And I thought, oh, good thing I'm clean now. There's nothing in here.
I mean, what did you talk about?
You know what, Sal? He says, AJ, you got any more of that strawberry ice cream left? I said, I sure do, Detective Perez. They had just had elections, so the reason that Joe came back, and he says, AJ, we've got a lot of new people coming in. He says, and I personally have an opportunity to become the lead investigator for the entire state of Nevada. He says, this is something that I feel would benefit everybody involved, and that means you as well, AJ. Would you consider going over to the district attorney's office, and would you make him some clothing? Make him look the part of what a DA should look like. I didn't have to think long on that. I said, you bet I will. He's going to look 20 times better than they've ever looked.
Argus told me the story. Joe Perez told me this too. So this is not like Argus making a story, because I talked to Joe Perez.
So you actually spoke with Joel Perez on the phone?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. I called him up. We started talking. And this is before he passed away. I mean, he told the story, not word to word, but, you know, everybody's got a way of telling the story, but it all said the same thing. He was sweet, but you could tell in his voice, don't piss me off. And the funny part is, when they got done doing this deal, that's how they became friends.
There was a rapport that was made at that moment, I felt, with Detective Perez. It went from kind of a fear to where it was more of a pleasant situation.
And what AJ realizes, and it's all unspoken, is that they knew there was a quid pro quo. You take care of my people, we'll take care of you.
So I got a little bit of sleep. I got up and went over to the city attorney's office, measured him, picked out some beautiful fabrics, immediately struck up a beautiful friendship with another political figure.
He's looking in the small mirror, standing sideways, going into every pose. And he said, Jesus Christ, I look better than the headliners. And so from there, it was so obvious that this was going to really be an important thing for me.
AJ fit in with everybody, no matter who you introduced him to, they liked him. The mob, the local police, the politicians, he had everybody.
One person started referring me to another. It went from the city attorney to several judges to people that were associated in the Nevada Gaming Commission to one federal judge. Now I am designing and making wardrobes for some of the top political people that are running the state of Nevada.
He was a people person.
And he was a master at selling himself. So when he started telling me about the politicians and the police department and the judges, hey, I believed every bit of it.
And a lot of them he didn't even charge, because he wanted them to be his friends. He wanted them to be obligated to him and him to them.
This is exactly what it says. You take care of people, they take care of you.
Many of these people became very good friends of mine.
Joel and myself, for a lot of years, make reference to, how did you guys meet? And Joel would always say, well, we met at an ice cream social. And that was one of the absolute best things that could have ever happened, was Joel Perez coming through my door.
I presume the police force in Las Vegas at that period of time, had its feet in the criminal element. And I'm sure Joel Perez took advantage of what he could. But that was very much part of Vegas and part of AJ, where there's this good part and there's this bad part, and then there's this part in the middle. Perhaps that's why they were friends. They both understood that.
So AJ was keeping things balanced. But a question that will always be in my mind is, how did AJ remain so neutral? Did the mob know he was talking to the cops? Did the Colombians know about the mob? Because they didn't want to be involved with them. How did he manage to juggle all of this?
At this point, AJ is walking a tightrope. He needs to keep the Colombians away from the mob, away from law enforcement, and he's at the center of all three of those.
At the time, I really did not know exactly how far this thing was going. I was trying to really keep everybody happy and separated.
It was a very active, busy time, and then here comes my Colombian friends into Las Vegas, and customs or however they're getting in is their business, and they wanted to have a good time.
They wanted to see what all AJ had talked about and everything, so they started coming into Las Vegas, and they was bringing all their drugs with them.
They think AJ is this huge celebrity, kind of like Pablo Escobar in Colombia, and that they can just come to Vegas and take over the town. So they do. And one night, they end up at the Flamingo Hotel. They're having a huge cocaine party.
Somehow, Tony Spilatro had got word that the Colombians had all of these kilos of cocaine. So Tony Spilatro and his gang members, they were going to knock off a Colombian guy, get the cocaine to sell it themselves. They were going to most likely kill him.
And so when Spilatro was going to rip off the Colombian guy, AJ knew this was very bad news because the worlds would collide.
I heard about Tony Spilatro, so I called the city attorney because he had become a client of mine.
Because AJ was friends with all these politicians, they had his back.
And I said to the city attorney that I needed some assistance with a bad situation. He says, AJ, what would you like? So I thought for a second, I said, would it be possible perhaps maybe to pick this fellow up and then take him to the airport, and then whatever he's got, package his stuff up and bring it over to my place.
So Tony Spilatro's on his way over there to shoot the Colombian and take the drugs. And AJ, in the nick of time, gets the cops to intervene.
The police pull up, sirens on, and the lights, everything, and they thwart the attempt of Tony Spilatro to knock off the Colombian.
It was fortunate that Spilatro didn't understand what had just happened. If he had gotten a hold of the Colombian, it would have been brutal. And more than likely, he would have gotten information out of this guy that would have implicated AJ, implicated law enforcement. It would have blown everything up.
And it wasn't much longer. I hear my doorbell ring. There was a police officer there with a bag. And he says, this is to be delivered to you, Mr. Pratt. And I opened the bag, and it was what was left of all of the cocaine.
The police delivered his cocaine back. Yeah, thank you, sir.
What a thrill that was. Everything was going so smoothly. Maintaining my free ass was the bottom line of it. And I had just like a euphoric feeling almost. That's a great feeling.
AJ was friends with the mob, the Colombians, the cops, the politicians. He's untouchable, man. There's nobody can get to him. He's got the good, the bad, and the ugly. AJ was on top of the world, but then the most unexpected thing happened. AJ fell in love again.
Her full name was Rosanna Teresa Maria Cladianas. She's a beautiful, beautiful Greek girl. Rosanna and myself just absolutely clicked.
I grew up in Montana, and I wanted to be a flight attendant, and Las Vegas was where the airline was based. But then I ended up loving Las Vegas. I met AJ at a party. He was so handsome and so gregarious, and it seemed like as soon as we were introduced, the attraction was so strong.
She worked in the evenings at the Bacchanal Room. She was selected out of the entire United States to be one of the what we call wine goddesses.
The wine goddess were very pretty, like Grecian costume, and then would lift the bottle up high and pour the wine, so it was theatrical.
Our relationship had grown it became very deep. Ro was somebody I could confide in.
When AJ lost his wife, Linda, back in 1968, it really damaged him. And it was hard for him to have any sort of real, meaningful relationship after that, until he met Rosanna.
We had a very good, intimate relationship where he really did open up with me.
I shared things with Ro because she knew everybody that was anybody in Las Vegas. But at the same time, the amazing thing is Ro had no idea of my cocaine business. Not just the smuggling, but that I was using cocaine now. And had never had any idea.
I was just like gaga over him.
We went ahead and made arrangements to spend the rest of our life together. So we were married. Caesar's Palace, they put on the most beautiful wedding reception, and it was spectacular. It was quite an unusual gathering of people. One side is a district attorney, the city attorney, several judges, and over here is the same people that the organized crime unit had been wanting to interrogate me about.
It really was beautiful, but it happened so quickly. To be honest with you, I got that deep feeling inside of me that I was making a mistake, that I shouldn't do this, but it's too late now.
My God, I was skipping along so much, so happy with what I had.
Having such a good time with all of my dear friends in Las Vegas.
After we got married, we moved in together. There was so much love between us. It really wasn't work. It was just so fun for both of us.
I was having breakfast at the Bacchanal Room where Rosanna and Joel Perez stopped by. Of course, he was good friends with Ro.
Joel and AJ, I know, had a very good relationship. However, he wasn't one to come by where we lived, to meet someplace. He seemed to be well respected with whatever he was doing, and I thought he was like a good law enforcement person, But there were a lot of things that I didn't know about.
After our friendship had really been strongly established, Joel Perez would keep his ears and eyes open around the city.
He said, "You're doing a wardrobe for Abe Schwartz, right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I just finished it." He says, "Does he owe you any money?" I said, "Yeah, he still owes me about $5,000 on it."
Abe Schwartz was a scoundrel. He was involved in real estate scams in Vegas, building motels and things like that. And, of course, AJ made his suits like he made for everyone else.
He says, "You need to charge your money right now." I said, well, Joe, I made an appointment. I did talk to him. I'm going to meet Abe at 10 o'clock in the morning over at his house. I'm going to drop it off over there. And he says, no. He said, you call Abe, let him know that you need to come over at 10 o'clock tonight to deliver it.
AJ did say to Joel, why? And I guess Abe had crossed a lot of people, and some of them were just not people to cross. Working at Caesars, I heard about things like that happening, because at that time Las Vegas was a mob city. The mob ran the town.
So I stopped by Abe Schwartz's house, delivered the wardrobe, collected my $5,000, and I was on my way.
So he got the money from Abe. Next day, he sees a television news report. Abe Schwartz is missing.
And full screen, bam, right there it is, a picture of Abe Schwartz announcing that Abe Schwartz is missing. And I'll never forget the feeling I had. I was just shocked.
AJ had gotten his money in the nick of time, and it was quite literally paying off for him to have relationships with cops like Joel Perez.
AJ had a lot of people in his pocket, but not everyone.
After about 2 weeks, I was contacted by the FBI, as I guess I was the last person that was around this particular man when he was living. And I had delivered the wardrobe to him, so the FBI was on me.
So they went over to him and said, "What's up?" And AJ said, I have absolutely no idea. As far as I know, AJ was never a suspect, but now he was on the FBI's radar, and that is someplace he did not want to be.
If AJ felt the FBI was to be feared more than the drug people or the mob people or the police involved, that may reflect that he felt he was in good shape with those groups. But the FBI not only could put him away, but if they get him, do the mobsters think AJ's going to sing and it's time to dispose of him?
The next day or two, they found Schwartz in a shallow grave, dressed head to toe in A.J. Pratt's fashions.
The gentleman was wearing some of the new garments that I had just delivered to him. He had a sports jacket with slacks. My labels are all on everything he had on, including his shoes. I'd even made him some shoes of A.J.'s original fashions. And so that was the beginning of many bodies that were going to be discovered.
The cops started finding these shallow graves in the desert, and lo and behold, every one of them was wearing AJ's fashions.
Every time they would find one of these people buried out in the desert in a shallow grave, wearing his suit, they'd come back to him and ask me, "You must know something, don't you?"
Well, that put a lot of pressure on AJ.
And this went on for months.
I think this was starting to mess with his mind a little bit, to worry him.
I heard about things like that happening, but the whole time that I was with AJ, he did not talk to me about the FBI coming to talk with him. I mean, there's so much that he kept from me.
FBI people would take me to their morgue, and these would be people that had been dug up in the shallow holes in the ground.
So you knew who those people were?
Yes, I did on several. I denied it unconditionally, but it was the mob guys. I mean, I almost crapped when I saw two of them, especially one of them. I know I made a lot of clothes for him. And I figured, oh my God, well, if they're taking these people out, for God's sake, I mean, with all that I know, they'll take me out.
People are being discovered dead in shallow graves in the desert around Las Vegas. FBI has no idea if there's any connection between them, except for one thing. They're all buried with custom-made, very nice, hand-tailored clothing by AJ. And say, you make the clothes for these people. Do you know them? How are they connected? Well, of course he knew a lot more about them. But he would say, I don't know anything about them, I just make their clothes.
When the mob puts you in a shallow grave in the desert, those kinds of things are messages to others. We did it to him, we'll do it to you.
And AJ told me that he had to kind of lay low there for a while and just kind of let things cool down. But the FBI didn't let go that easy.
So now I've got the FBI. They were like vultures circling the area. And I still have the mob guys watching me, and I always was looking over my shoulder.
He said, I couldn't believe it. He said, they followed me around. Even the mob was following me now, because he didn't want to know if I was squealing and everything. He said, but the FBI kept trying, and finally they said they kind of backed off.
He knew who they were, but he was not going to tell the FBI. He was loyal to the mobsters, and he also knew what would happen if he wasn't.
I was extremely nervous about that. I've never really been afraid of hardly anything, but I was very afraid at that time.
And he made sure he kept very strictly to that code.
And what happened to your marriage with Roe?
With Roe, once she became involved as a wife to me, she damn near drove me crazy.
Why did she drive you crazy?
Because she was too conservative.
I think AJ thought he was going to have this great world with her and a real family life, and she's a beautiful woman, everything that he thought he was dreaming of. But at the end of the day, that wasn't who he was.
After Roseanne and AJ married, they had a son named Damon, and she wanted to settle down. But I think AJ was spending so much time working and probably doing a lot of cocaine too, that it caused a wedge in their marriage.
AJ was just not the same man. AJ became very paranoid and very on edge. I didn't know then, but later I found out it had to do with drugs. But it was just clear that AJ's lifestyle that he really wanted was completely opposite to my ethics. Yes, I loved having the glamour, and I always did have a good time, but I wanted a real home life. But AJ was vulnerable to being tempted by what was more exciting or whatever than, a normal home life. And honestly, even when we had a good relationship, it was crowded with a lot of other women. Women would just throw themselves at him, and I would be with him at the time, and AJ couldn't say no. And I just said no more.
I think he had regrets about that. But I think at that point, he was addicted to the fast times he was living.
The more time went on, things were not good and they weren't getting better.
I couldn't live with her.
When I would want to leave him, he would get very upset. I was also a little bit fearful about leaving him too, because he could be violent, if he was upset. I had to wait till he went out of town. I couldn't tell him that I was going to leave. So I left him. My heart, it was completely shattered.
Our marriage didn't last long. We got divorced.
Eventually, Roseanne bought a house in Lake Mary, Florida, and she raised Damon there. But Damon never wanted anything to do with AJ.
When AJ got divorced from Rosanna, he was kind of spiraling out of control.
But I was just an emotional wreck.
And boom, all of a sudden I get a call. And it's from the Colombian guys. Barry Seal and I have to go to Colombia, load up with cocaine, and then fly back to Miami, Florida. On the way, we would usually stop at Norman's Cay.
One of the original members of the Medellin cartel was a guy named Carlos Later. He was flying loads of cocaine out of Colombia to the United States, and he came up with an idea to create a transshipment point called Norman's Cay. And that's an island in the Bahama Island chains. He went in and he just took over. He intimidated the people on there so that they would sell their properties to him and move away. He extended the airstrip 3,300 feet. Basically what he's doing is creating a point where you can now fly cocaine from Colombia to Norman's Cay on one tank of gas. Then you would parse those out into smaller shipments, either through go-fast boats or smaller aircraft that could make it on up to the United States on one tank of gas. This was pretty ingenious.
In the beginning there, it was absolutely perfect. Now, a few years go by, all of a sudden, Norman's Cay is starting to get a little dangerous, and it was going downhill quickly.
I think the downfall of Norman's Cay and Carlos Later was Carlos let the product become his enemy because he started using it. And things really started getting wild.
Norman's Cay was wild because the cocaine was everywhere. It was just one contiguous party.
It was like an island of debauchery. There were like Jeeps driving up with machine guns and naked girls and cocaine everywhere.
That becomes, at a certain point, too crazy.
Carlos Later would be blitzed. He'd been smoking weed, snorting coke, drinking alcohol. He was bringing too much undue attention to their illegal activities.
Norman's Cay was getting dangerous, and AJ and Barry Seal both knew that this is stupid.
I'm a very cautious person. Once we saw the entire setup at Norman's Cay starting to get more crazy by the day, and the way that it was out of control, I was wanting to get out of there.
So AJ and Barry Seal were doing a drug run, and AJ's in like a haze of cocaine, literally and figuratively. But he somehow managed to be focused on the business.
There's no way you can get by in the business that I specialized in as far as smuggling and dealing cocaine unless you are extremely low-key. And that is what I was. I pay so careful attention, Sal, to every single move I make. However, that's not the case at Norman's Cay. I recognize that if this were to go on, I'm going to get caught sooner or later because these people aren't as careful as I am.
And AJ knew this is getting risky. A plane could be used only a certain number of times before the FAA and therefore the DEA would become suspicious of what it was doing. And so they needed to do a run, get rid of the plane with a clean slate, and give the owner of the plane his money back. So they had to come up with something pretty clever, and they did.
We figured that the least exposure that we had to that particular aircraft would be by far the smartest thing for us to do. So I called the aircraft owner, and I said, I'm finally finished with the wardrobe. In other words, everything was about clothing your wardrobe. That meant now's the time for you to report your aircraft stolen. And that's exactly what he did.
When they got word that owner of the plane had turned the plane in as stolen, Barry Seal had a crazy idea. He says, well, I know a guy that can right close to the coast in Florida, and we'll just fly low into the fields and we'll crash this plane. We'll have a 50-50 chance of making it.
And AJ's going, okay, sure. And Barry goes, well, but you're coming with me. And AJ goes, no, I'm not. And Barry goes, oh, yes, you are, or else we're not doing this. So he was, forced to do it. He was scared out of his mind. But Barry was an amazing pilot. AJ was born to make clothes, and Barry was born to fly a plane.
Barry and I were very, very close friends. I liked him, and he was a smart guy, someone that I could trust. Now, that's a big thing right there, when you're trusting your freedom and your life. Barry knew exactly how he wanted to handle it. He was so calculated to know exactly the amount of fuel to have on board to get to Naples and to get that plane destroyed and not have anything go wrong to where we would have a large explosion that could possibly do damage to us. He told me there's clumps of small trees. I want to clip it with the right wing. And he said, when I'm going in, that's when you really brace yourself, because there'll probably be a thug. And he says you want to be very fixed, your seatbelt tight.
I can't imagine purposefully crashing an aircraft with me on it. I don't know. I guess I'm just not made that way. But wow, what a risk to take.
I did not as much as have a cocktail, let alone have any other drugs. I was as straight as one can get. Now, right that's the minute that my brain was going fast, and I'm thinking all kinds of scenarios that could possibly happen. Because if anything went wrong at all while we were even in the air, I'm flying in a stolen aircraft. And then, of course, there's extra fuel tanks and all of that stuff. Then there would be drug charges on it, and it would just be horrific. It would be almost as bad as if we got caught with a load of stuff in it. But now we're adding theft. We're adding international transportation of illegal drugs. In other words, all of these illegal things. And all we've got to do now for all of this to go away is to make it to Naples, Florida, and stay alive.